them from doing so. And now we will have special music by Savannah Gordon. Them from
Be not dismayed, fear not the darkness. Jesus is here. He walks
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry. But amen. Thank you, Savannah. I don't know if she's online right now, but that was a beautiful song and it blessed my heart for sure. So right now we're just gonna show a quick video for Youth Week of Prayer, I believe. And after that, we're gonna proceed with the program. So for all the young people that saw this on the call, I suggest that you sign up to go. It's going to be an amazing event. So now I'm just going to show a video about a survivor of domestic violence and her experience with that. I'll also give out another trigger warning that some of the things she talks about are very triggering. So like I said before, if you want to come off the call and take a break, that's fine. But yeah, just to warn you about the sensitivity of the video.
Who are you today?
I'm a survivor. I don't think I've said that out loud. It was late 2014, early 2015 that I met my former partner. We were introduced by family members from either side. It started off very on the surface, like very much a love story. We had a lot of fun, so many similarities. He didn't live here. He actually lived in the States. So it was a lot of like back and forth visiting, which was great too. In the beginning, it was psychological and emotional. So I would say things like we'd get into a huge argument and then I'd just be like, it's too much for me. I don't want to be in the relationship anymore. And he would literally call my phone like 100 times in a row. 100, to dial somebody's number 100 times in a row is ridiculous. Over and over and over and over and over again. And I'd start to feel like, oh my God, like I'm such a monster, this poor guy, like he wants to work it out, this and that, whatever. So the emotional and the psychological was common, and that was like maybe like for the first 2 years. And so it didn't really feel like what I'd term as abuse. When he actually came here, moved here, that's when the physical started. And that's when I started to see like, this is crazy. I realized that it was either going to be me or him, in the sense that if I didn't leave, I wouldn't be around. It was like year 3 that when the physical started, just, you know, shoving and stuff like that. And I definitely don't want to come across as so victimized that I never defended myself. I would shove right back, like, and I'm in shock, like somebody you love, like putting their hands on you, like, what are you doing, right? But then very quickly it progressed into things like being choked against a wall. There was even a point where he tackled me like a football player, and he's a big guy. And I would never wish on my worst enemy the feeling of somebody's hands around your neck and looking at somebody who has proclaimed that they love you, but is literally jeopardizing your life. I never had real sincere thoughts of truly leaving until the physical abuse began, because that's when it was my wake-up call. Yeah, it's my wake-up call. It was an entire turning point in my life. 2019 was the year that broke me, but it was also the year that blessed me with a strength that I earned. I'm grateful to say I'm in a great space right now. Very grateful to say that, because some women will never get to say that. It's a difference between literal life and death. And I would advise women to choose life. Do whatever you need to do to survive. Yeah, and be strong, but don't stay. Don't stay.
So as you can see from the video, abuse has a profound and very traumatic effect on survivors who have endured this type of violence throughout their life, and can tear them down in ways that they can't even talk about. So there's also this thing called a cycle of abuse. Usually, as she described, things go really well. You experience, high emotions, you're receiving love from your partner, and that's usually known as love bombing, when oversaturating with compliments and good things. But then that usually leads and goes into a stage where manipulation starts to begin, emotional abuse, mental abuse, and that can often lead to physical abuse. And that's when the abuser or the perpetrator of that violence can show their true colors. So it's best for us to educate ourselves, to see the signs from early. Usually it's hard to detect those signs when people appear like they're fine on the outside, but other times it can boil over. And I think it's up to us sometimes to catch on to that and make a safe space for people that have gone through these things, for them to talk about what they've gone through, instead of shaming them, as she said, and saying like, oh, maybe I should have left earlier, maybe you should have done this, maybe you should have called the police. It's better for us to listen to their stories and see how we can help them instead. So can we go on to the next part of the presentation? So the facts about gender-based violence. 67% of Canadians know a woman who has experienced physical or sexual abuse. So this could be most of us in this room, unfortunately. And six times Indigenous women are killed at 6 times the rate of non-Indigenous women. You often hear about stories about Indigenous women and the missing Indigenous women that, go missing in Canada, but they often don't get solved. And it's because they're a marginalized group and they're the most unprotected in this country. And 6,000 plus women and children sleep in shelters on any given night because it isn't safe at home. And I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure that this was a statistic before the pandemic, but now it could even be more due to everything that's going on. Next slide. One in 3 women have experienced some form of violence in their lifetime. 82% of those under 18 who experience sexual assault as girls. So that's a very high number. And 5% of sexual assaults were reported to police back in 2014. And it says here, hundreds of millions of women have experienced violence. 1 in 3 women have experienced physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. We discussed that. And 763 million women on average who were aged 15 years or older in 2018 have experienced one or both of these forms of violence. This is a very high number. I believe that the only reason why this is happening, and you can disagree with me, but I believe that this is happening because we don't hold people accountable. There's not enough education about these things, and we're too afraid to call out evil for its proper name. When we see these things happening, we have to say, look, this is not right, and it needs to stop. It begins with our voices and telling people what it really is and what is right from wrong. Because some people don't understand that. And some people think even the littlest things when it comes to women, that, they would get away with it and that it should be tolerated, but it shouldn't be. Women are God's children and they should be treated as such. Next slide. So forms or types of gender-based violence or abuse. One we discussed was domestic. Another one is sexual violence or harassment, eve teasing, dowry-related violence, verbal, emotional, and mental, and spiritual abuse as well. So domestic violence. Domestic violence is a pattern behavior which involves violence or other abuse by one person against another in a domestic setting, such as a marriage or cohabitation. Domestic violence can take a number of forms, including physical, verbal, emotional, economic, religious, and sexual abuse. And this was discussed in the video. During this COVID-19 pandemic, there has been an increase in gender-based violence within homes across Canada, causing survivors of abuse emotional and mental distress. And due to fear, only 1 in 10 women report their abuse to police. Sexual violence. Forcing someone to have sexual interactions without their consent after being hurt either physically or emotionally. It could also be forcing someone into prostitution and sex trafficking, which is very high in Ontario. I don't specifically have a statistic on that, but I know it is on the rise even in our own city. Even, in the simplest places where we feel like it's not going on, it is happening, and we need to recognize that as a people. And first, forcing someone to have sexual relations with another person, which is outside of their consent, forcing someone to look, act, or pose for pornographic material, pressure for dates or sexual favors, catcalling and harassment, which has also been on the rise as of lately, and sexual explicit telephones, emails, or text messages. The facts. Is sexual assault really as common as people say? And this fact is taken from Canadian Women's Foundation, and it says, women self-reported 553,000 sexual assaults in 2014. According to Statistics Canada's General Social Survey on Victimization, women were 10 times more likely than men to be victims of police-reported sexual assault in 2008. Although both men and women experienced sexual assault, women accounted for 92% of victims of police-reported sexual assaults in 2008. Now, physical violence. Physical violence is the deliberate use of physical force with the potential of harming someone, and this was discussed in the video that was showed earlier. This may include scratching or biting, pushing or shoving, throwing, grabbing, choking, shaking, hair pulling, slapping, punching, or hitting, and the use of a weapon. Anything that is used to physically harm another person falls under this category. And this even includes harassment at the workplace. Belittling or threatening behavior directed at an individual worker or a group of workers, or sexual harassment is a form of sex discrimination that occurs in the workplace. And usually these instances go unreported, or when women report it, it's usually dismissed because it's in fear of their job being taken away. So this affects women in a very great way. So eve teasing, I know someone asks about it, so I'm just gonna explain what it is now. So eve teasing is normally meant as teasing a girl or a woman. Eve teasing refers to public sexual harassment or street harassment to a girl by a boy. So think of catcalling, but in a more physical way or sexual way. It's more like that. Eve teasing has now become a common affair in our society. School or college-going girls are the main victims of this. So now I'm going to deal with intimate partner violence, or domestic violence, you could say, in a church setting. And this is taken from End It Now, which is a campaign on abuse in intimate partner relationships, or abuse in general in the Adventist Church. And I think we should all check that out once we get the time. I'm going to put the link in the chat. It basically gives us resources on how we can deal with these things if it ever occurs. So dealing with allegations of intimate partner violence in the local church. And this was written by Dr. Mabel Dunbar. Take the allegations seriously. Take immediate action. The first responsibility of church leaders is to provide safety first and ask questions later. Help the victim find a safe place to stay. If you are not trained or experienced with how to deal with the issues of abuse and domestic violence, or have emotional barriers, refer her to someone who can help her and be a healing resource. And that may even include resources outside of the church. If you are not aware of any Christian helpers or programs, it is better to refer her to a secular shelter or provide ongoing support rather than encourage her to return home, because usually that is a source of violence and then the cycle will continue. Give her the opportunity to talk with you without the abuser present. Listen to her concerns and be emotionally supportive without touching her. It is always best not to speak with her by yourself. If possible, ask a trusted female to be with you. Do not advocate couples counseling or marriage counseling. They do not stop abuse and should not be recommended at this time. If the abuser pursues her and tries to prevent her from speaking with you without him being present, call the police. Affirm her strength in talking with you. Let her know that in the event you learn that she is suicidal or threatening to harm someone, or you feel that she is in danger, you will have to get help and inform the proper authorities. And this takes immediate action as well. Do not misquote scripture to suggest that the responsibility of fixing the marriage, providing her children with a father, or converting her abuser, or being a Christian witness rests upon her. This could make her feel that she is responsible for his salvation, especially if he is not a Christian. Quote scriptures that are empowering, liberating, hopeful, and affirming. Do not re-victimize her by alluding that she must have done something to make him act that way, or that she must have done something for him to abuse her. And I just want to touch upon that point quickly, if you can go back. So where it mentions re-victimizing the person who is sharing their experience with this, it's also a part of the culture of victim blaming. Usually when you see someone come out about their abuse, or a certain traumatic event that they've suffered by the hands of the opposite gender, there's usually the response of, maybe you should have done this to prevent you from being in danger. For example, if someone was sexually assaulted, what were you wearing? Did you provoke the person? And that is honestly the wrong way to go about things. It's not protecting the victim. It's not listening to their story. And it's not, as I said, reaffirming them. So it's best that you try to be a listening ear to them and give them the best resources that can help them in their time of need. You can go on to the next one. Help her find appropriate economic support for herself and her children. Have a list of available resources that you can suggest to her. Offer her options in her search for continued safety, healing, recovery, and empowerment. Options should also include ongoing education on the, ongoing education on the following topics, such as self-esteem, assertiveness, training, anger management, conflict resolution, stress management, reality testing, family of origin issues, self-care, problem solving, and goal setting, just to get them back on their feet. Okay, she might decide that it is best for her to return to the abusive situation. Share with her your concerns for her safety and well-being. Usually this is due to financial situations, or even manipulation that we cannot even see from the partner on the receiving end. Never condemn her for her decision. Let her know that you respect her decision and that you will be there to help if she needs you in the future. Help her to develop a safety plan in the event that she decides to leave the abusive situation. As a part of the safety plan, encourage her to secure the following: money, clothing, identification, legal papers, birth certificates, passports, credit or bank cards, bank statements, emergency numbers, and an extra set of keys. So this is also a video from End It Now. They have a YouTube channel and it's very informative. And it's about domestic violence and intimate partner violence in religious settings.
Domestic violence happens even in Christian homes. As human beings, we're not exempt from brokenness just because we claim to follow Jesus. In an interview, television actor and Christian Terry Crews talked about what he learned growing up in an abusive home and overcoming his own struggles with being a controlling husband. He said, "It's impossible to love someone and control them at the same time." According to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, more than 1 in 3 women, 35.6%, and more than 1 in 4 men, 28.5%, in the United States have experienced rape, physical violence, and/or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Domestic violence can take on many forms: physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental, emotional, and even spiritual abuse. Domestic violence also doesn't just happen in marriages. Domestic violence, manipulation, and controlling behavior are common in dating relationships as well. Because of Jesus' example of unconditional love, even enduring abuse on the cross, some misunderstand how God desires we respond to abuse. When we look at the whole of Scripture, we see a clear picture. In addition to Jesus living a life of service to others, he regularly drew boundaries to protect his well-being and ministry. In Mark 3, Jesus doesn't meet with his family because he knows they're worried about him and will try to stop him from doing his work. In John 7:1, Jesus avoids going to Judea because he knows the Jewish leaders are looking for a way to kill him there. In Mark 4, a crowd gathers so large that Jesus must preach from a boat. After the teaching is over, he tells his disciples to set off across the lake to get away from the crowd, and he goes to rest in the back of the boat. God does not desire for us to stay in relationships where we're being abused, even when we're married. 1 John 4:7-8 tells us, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love." God desires for us to live fully connected to him, free from the chains of sin in this world. Remember the portrait of love from 1 Corinthians 13:4-8? Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Abuse is control. Abuse is sin. Love, it's respect. Plain and simple. Love is freedom. If you have been a controlling or abusive partner, you can seek help. If you are being isolated, controlled, or abused by your partner or someone else, you're not alone. Call the National Domestic Violence Hotline for help, or visit enditnownorthamerica.org for Adventist resources.
That video was very informative, giving us more information on how we can help within our church setting. I know I've been talking a lot. Does anyone have anything that they want to say or would like to express at the moment about what they've learned or anything?
I have a question, but I don't know if it's something that you can answer or if someone's on the line that knows the answer. What do you do when you realize somebody is being abused? So if not that you've seen anything, but you've heard that they're abused, what are the steps that you take from there?
Glenn here, if you want me to answer that as far as the law is concerned, years ago, how it was, is it okay for me to go ahead?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, quite a few years ago, the police would not take a complaint from anyone other than the victim. So people used to get away because the victim, like I said, most of the times, 1 in 10 reported to the police. But the law was changed, and basically now anyone can report an abuse. So all you have to do is call the police, tell them what you see, and let them go and investigate it. So, if you see a car driven, get the license plate number. That's all you have to do and call right away. But the police will take the report. In fact, they must take it and must investigate it to see what it is. So now you don't have to go confront the person, but if you get enough information so the police can have something to act on. So you can call the police on your own, because now a lot of the times when the police investigate domestic assaults, it doesn't come from the victim. It comes from the neighbors who hear something and call the police. That's why so many men are getting charged now. And the woman can't say, no, I don't want to press charge. It's not her choice anymore. Just remember that. The woman can't, if the police goes in and see that there is an abuse, someone is getting arrested. And it doesn't matter what the woman say, and she's going to go to court. And at the end of the day, we try not to victimize her by forcing her to come to court and testify. We leave that part up to her. But up to that point, the police is going to go in, they're going to arrest, and they're going to not only arrest, but prohibit him from going back home until the case is concluded. So yes, you just have to call the police, give them information you have, and they will act on it.
And so I'm trying to figure out what happens behind all of that. So if I were to say call the police, does that individual now get more abuse at their home because the cops were called on, their husband or their wife, whoever the abuser is, and does it put them in? Because a lot of people don't call because they don't have a way out. Like they don't have a safe place. They don't have finances. And so I'm just trying to figure out, is that the best way to deal with it? And I honestly don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what would a therapist or a counselor say or what have you in terms of how to do it.
Do you mind if I, Brother Wilson?
Go ahead.
I was just looking up here on the Women's Health, the government website. They do give a few tips on how to go about it, because I was thinking the same thing that Gilbert was saying. What if they get to her house and she doesn't, everything seems normal and the police aren't able to do anything, but the abuser gets wind of it. On here, one of the things it says to do is, if you suspect it, is try to set up some time to talk to the individual. And I think Hannah had mentioned that in there, privately, but make sure you're with someone else as you're speaking to them. If it's, let's say it's you, make sure there's another female there, and try to have a conversation with them and get information with them, let them know what you've seen, and try to get them to talk about it, and try to see what resources, if they're willing to leave, what kind of things can you help them put in place? If they're not willing to leave, you also have to kind of respect that, but as well as monitor the situation to be a support in the background, it's saying. So offer those kind of services as well. You're doing things and maybe possibly having other people aware so that it's known to some extent. And when I say other people, not like in our case, not the whole church, but people that you can trust that can look out as well, so that if anything does happen, you have it documented and that you did speak to them.
Can I add something to that as well? From being a criminology student as well, we are also taught that even if, say, that person gets out of custody or something and you're worried about them going back to that person, hopefully the victim will put a restraining order. And even if they are out of on custody or on parole or something, and they do come back to the house, they will definitely be arrested for jail time. So even if before there's not enough evidence, they have to arrest them anyways, because they they have to arrest someone for domestic, any type of domestic, especially like if children are around. But if they have a restraining order and then they come back on the property, even if they come back, not even if they touch them, nothing, they will be arrested.
Yes, just let me elaborate on that. The thing what the government statistics put out and what they suggest, that's good. But sometimes sometimes there is no evidence. And unfortunately, if there's no evidence and there's no complaint, sometimes it's very hard. And I always tell people that, remember, the police can't be there 24 hours a day. But usually in the situations where it's a total stranger calling and not the victim, then that's always the best way, because the perpetrator knows that it's not the victim that's calling. So that sometimes that make him realize people see what I'm doing and I'm gonna get arrested. And the other thing, they automatically, it's called a show cause. Every person who's now arrested for domestic violence, and it's either or, and you're automatically put on some type of restraining order. First of all, you can't go back to that premises except one time to get your belongings until the case is concluded, until such time that the court can change it as they go along. But yes, like in the situation where I was explaining to Gilbert, from my experience, I find that just get enough information, we still need the evidence. I mean, if we go there and there's nothing, but if you tell me exactly what the person did, that I saw this man punch this woman in the mouth, I don't need the woman to tell me, yes, he did that. I'm relying on Gilbert's testimony, an independent person who doesn't know them, who have no beef to grind. That is enough evidence for me, because the police doesn't need to see anything. I mean, if I go there and her mouth is bleeding and she attempts to walk in the wall, I won't believe her, because Gilbert already told me that I saw the man punch her in the face. That's enough for me to go there and arrest him and take him out of that house, and he's prohibited from going back there. So make sure, if push comes to shove and you have no other attitude, the quickest way to get to it is to call the police. And that's what I would suggest in most situations anyway.
But sometimes, could I say something?
Just
Yes.
a quick question about what you just said. Is that call going to be anonymous? So will you tell them that Joan called and said that Gilbert is being abused, or that Gilbert's abusing the wife, and that's why I'm here? Because that's also going to less inclined to report if you know that.
Whoa. I'm not the abuser in this scenario.
We're just using your name.
No, I want to be the person that's telling. I don't want to be the abuser, even in this scenario.
Right.
There are two things with that. Okay. You have a strong, it can be anonymous. You can say, I want this to be anonymous right off the bat. That means they're not going to come back to you as a witness.
Okay.
They can do that. But you'll have a stronger case, because like Hannah was saying, 1 out of 10 women actually will call the police. And that's true. The problem with domestic is that the women do not complain.
Right.
That is a big problem. And not only after they complain and we go there because the neighbors call, they still let the men back in the house behind our back, although there's a restraining order against him. But the fact is, you can say this is anonymous. I don't want to be a part of it. I'm just giving you this information. The police have to act. The second, you could say, I'm a witness and I want to say something about it. So they have a stronger case now, because they have somebody that can go to court. Yes, I saw him punch her in the mouth, whether she want to say it or not. It's just make it strong if it's not anonymous.
But could I say something here?
Yes.
Sometimes those police can be liars too, eh? Because I had a situation with the police not too long ago, and he lied up and down. I could not believe it. And
But we're not talking about a bad policeman here. We're just talking about what you're supposed to do. Because there's always going to be bad people. And bad policemen, bad lawyers, bad doctors is a part of, bad preachers is a part of the whole fact of life. We're just talking about what should happen, really. Policemen lie all the time. So but they still have to call them, because 9 out of 10, that's good. Maybe you get one of them.
could I continue?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that I am really, really glad that this came up with Anna here with this program, because I have been in that situation. Thank you, Brother Wilson. Yeah, I've been in that position in an abusive situation. And it's not all that what you think it is. And women are abusers too. They do abuse, and it is sad in the Adventist church. And you can see it in the kids. And I'm so happy also that Danita mentioned about, we should get, anyway, going into the chat room, into the breakout room. We should always have 2 people in there at a given time, not one person, because some of those fathers are big, big abusers in the homes, and you don't know what those kids are going through. I happen to go into the shelters, and our kids are going through rough time, brethren.
Hannah?
At this time, we're going to have Acacia speak. Acacia?
Hi.
Hi.
Wow, Hannah called me out. I just wanted to say that I think each situation is very different, because I feel like you could go to the police and things might go well. It might be that, she speaks up and everything goes well, or it could be that you get to the door and she doesn't say anything and there's no evidence. And it could be that someone can say that there's evidence, but they haven't actually seen it. So when they get to court, there's no evidence. It's just hearsay. Or it can be that, the person that they're with is someone that's rich and famous, or that's high up in ranks, where they can actually get to, they can pay someone off, or they can get to a point where they can cancel all that happened, and she's right back in that same situation. So I feel like each situation is very different, but it also, there's not one specific thing you can do, but each scenario requires different things that should be done. I don't know if I'm making sense, but okay.
That does make sense, Acacia. What we're going to ask, because more people are wanting to speak, so I'm going to ask people use the raise hand symbol now, or, just, take your time, because we want to get everybody. So I saw, and based on what Acacia is saying, we have a few people who work in hospitals here. I know Joan works in a hospital. We have Christine Evans. I'm sure people come into hospitals too, and you can see that they're being abused, but unless they say something to the nurses or admit that that's the situation, and I'm guessing Joan can probably speak more to this, how much can they really say? Or how much can you force it on them if there's nothing proven?
It's the same responsibility that we have as teachers, that teachers have. I have to, if I see it, I have to report it by law. It's not a case of you don't want to hear from me, or I don't want to get you in trouble. For my own license, I have to report it, right? Because if they find out that I knew and I said nothing, then I'll lose my license. And that's not up for discussion. But on the flip side, all I can do is report it. And I'm reporting as a health professional, a health care provider, not as a friend or anything like that. So that carries some weight, but it can only go so far, because if the person doesn't want to acknowledge or agree, it's right back where Glenn said, where you cannot do anything more.
Okay, thank you, Joan. And I have Sister Tomby, who's had her hand up for a while. Sister Tomby.
In regards to reporting, before we came where we are now, I lived in an apartment building, and Roy used to work evening shift, and I was alone on evening on my own. And all of a sudden, I would hear a scream. I would hear bam, bam. You could, like if somebody was just throwing somebody against a wall. And I would hear screams, and I was so afraid because I'm not used to anything like that. So one day it was so bad. One night it was so bad, and I was so scared, as if it was whatever was happening to me. And I picked up the phone and I called 911. And I think the police, and I said to them, I'm not sure, but I told them exactly, and I'm afraid. And do you know that the police told the woman that the woman downstairs, and it happened quite a few other times, you know, and I didn't call in, but I called this one time. And the lady came to my door the next day, knocked. And luckily I had the chain on the door, because Roy always tell me, make sure you put that chain on the door. And this lady said to me, you, whatever, you call the police. And why don't you mind your whatever business? And this lady pushed her hand through the door to get my chain off. And I slammed the door and locked it. Now I was so scared, I called the police. And I told them exactly what happened. And the next day the police came and said,